If you've been watching too many fast-paced city dramas lately and feel like everything is starting to look the same, then this list might be exactly what you need. Because today we're diving into 5 Korean films set in the countryside. And trust me, these are not just slow or quiet movies. They are emotional, nostalgic, sometimes funny, sometimes heartbreaking, and honestly, they hit in a completely different way compared to urban stories. And I want you to think about this as we go through them. When was the last time a movie actually made you pause and just feel something, instead of just chasing plot twists? Let's start with Miracle, Letters to the President, starring Park Jung-min Lee, Sung-min, and Im Yoona. And this one is based on a true story, which already makes it more powerful because it follows a young math genius living in a small rural village in the 1980s who dreams of building a train station for his community. And what I find really interesting here is how simple that dream sounds, but at the same time, how impossible it feels. And instead of giving up, he writes letter after letter to the president, hoping someone will listen. And I want to ask you, have you ever wanted something so badly that you were willing to keep trying, even when nobody noticed? Because this film really captures that quiet persistence. And personally, I think what makes it special is not just the goal, but the people around him, the family, the friendships, the small moments that make the struggle feel real. And it reminds me that sometimes the biggest victories don't come from huge dramatic actions, but from consistency and belief. And I'm curious, do you think stories like this still happen today, or have we become too used to instant results? Pure Love 16. Next is Pure Love, also known as Unforgettable, starring Do Kyung-soo and Kim So-hyun. And this one is going to hit you emotionally in a very different way, because it's all about first love, friendship, and memories that never really leave you. And the story starts when a radio DJ receives a letter and a cassette tape from the past, bringing him back to his youth in a small seaside village. And I think what makes this film so relatable is how it captures that bittersweet feeling of growing up. Like those moments that seemed small back then, but become incredibly meaningful later. And let me ask you something. Do you ever think about your first love or your closest childhood friends and wonder what they're doing now? Because this movie really taps into that nostalgia. And honestly, I feel like films like this remind us that not all love stories are about happy endings. Sometimes it's about the memories themselves. And I'd love to know, do you prefer love stories that make you smile, or the ones that leave you a little heartbroken? The Classic, 2003. Now let's talk about The Classic, starring Son Ye-jin and Jo In-sung. And if you enjoy layered storytelling, this one is going to stay with you for a long time, because it tells 2 love stories across different timelines, one in the present and one in the past, connected through a series of letters discovered by a daughter about her mother's first love. And what I find fascinating here is how the countryside setting adds a sense of innocence and sincerity to the story. Like everything feels more genuine, more emotional. And I want to ask you this. Do you believe that love can transcend time? Or do you think every story is shaped by its era? Because this film kind of sits right in between those ideas. And personally, I think this is one of those movies that proves simple storytelling can be incredibly powerful when it's done right. No need for huge twists or action, just emotions that feel real. And I'm curious, would you watch an older film like this, or do you usually stick to newer releases? Little Forest. Then we have Little Forest, starring Kim Tae-ri, and this is probably the most calming film on the list. But don't mistake calm for boring, because this movie is all about healing, self-discovery, and reconnecting with yourself. And it follows a young woman who returns to her rural hometown after struggling in the city. And instead of dramatic conflict, the film focuses on everyday life, cooking, seasons changing, and small conversations. And I know some people might think nothing really happens in this kind of movie, but I actually think that's the whole point. And I want to ask you honestly, can you enjoy a film where the biggest event is just someone cooking a meal or walking through a field? Because for me, this is the kind of movie you watch when you're tired of everything, when you just need to slow down. And I feel like in today's fast-paced world, Stories like this are more important than ever. And I'd love to know, do you think movies should always entertain, or can they simply exist to comfort you? Hot Young Bloods 2018. Finally, we have Hot Young Bloods, starring Park Bo-young and Lee Jong-suk. And this one brings a completely different energy to the list, because it's set in a rural high school during the 1980s, and mixes romance, comedy, and rivalry in a way that feels both chaotic and fun. And what I like about this film is how it shows that even in a quiet countryside setting, life can still be dramatic, messy, and full of emotions, especially when it comes to young love and pride. And let me ask you this. Do you think growing up in a small town makes relationships simpler or more complicated? Because this movie kind of shows both sides. And personally, I think it's refreshing to see a story that doesn't take itself too seriously while still delivering genuine moments. And it reminds us that youth, no matter where you are, is always intense and unforgettable. And I'm curious, which do you enjoy more? Heavy emotional stories or light, entertaining ones like this? So when you look at all these films together, what really stands out to me is how the countryside setting changes everything. The pace, the emotions, even the way characters interact with each other. And it makes me wonder if we've been overlooking these kinds of stories just because they feel slower, when in reality, they might be the ones that stay with us the longest. And now I want to hear from you. Which of these films feels the most relatable to your life right now? And if you had to choose, would you rather live in the quiet of the countryside or the chaos of the city? Because your answer might say more about you than you think.